Hub, and I am here today with the fabulous Bridget Hallisey. Hello, Bridget.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you're here. So, Bridget is a parent coach who specializes in supporting parents through grief and loss. And I'll tell you, with this last year, your services have been so needed. All the loss that we have all gone through these last few months in COVID, but just, I think parenting has a lot of loss in it too. Even when your children
Yeah.
move on to a new stage, it's like it's a loss of that baby stage and that toddler stage. I felt that anyway. But Bridget, tell us how you got into becoming a brilliant parent coach and how you decided to specialize in grief and loss.
Yeah. So I think the answer to that question has like a few different parts. So for starters, I dealt with a couple of stages of grief throughout my life, and I've dealt with a lot of loss. Um, and most of it came after the loss of my father. And, I had a falling out in my relationship with my mother, which I think, a major part of that was that she was going through loss herself. And so she, didn't want to get help. She just kept to herself as, she did for the majority of her life. She also had a difficult relationship with her parents. And, she kind of just followed that same path. So we had a falling out. Her and my sisters hadn't talked for years. And, I struggled a lot with it. And I had to do a lot of work on myself and I guess find myself. And so the work that I do now is essentially helping in two parts. So the fact that I know how to deal with grief and loss because I've done it myself, and the fact that I watched my mother do that same thing and watch her have it affect her relationship with her kids. I know what that looks like. And, I've been through it myself. So I think that's the majority of the reason that I do what I do now, because I've seen the pain and I've seen how grief can affect relationships. So that's why I do what I do and why I want to help parents be able to move through that grief, because I wish someone was there to help my mom when she was doing it. But yeah, that's pretty much why I do what I do.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Bridget. It is, um, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I know, and I've known now that I've worked with you for so
Yeah.
long, that it has given you the ability to literally transform families with you having that history that and added to the education and the skills that you have to be able to coach a parent through a difficult time, that I mean, lemonade out of lemons, I think, is maybe one of the sayings that come to mind, because
Yeah.
you have gone through it and now I know that your work helps others. Now, when I was talking to you about your work, you have kind of 6 steps that you work through with parents. And what I wanted to focus on today is kind of a snapshot of how
Yeah.
you can support parents. So just kind of a quick maybe narrowing down those 6 steps into maybe 3 steps and explaining them to us, and just allowing us to see, the work that you do in a small, I know it takes
And
time
small.
to
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
through grief and loss, but if we can cover maybe 3 of those steps to give us an idea of what we should be thinking about as parents if we're dealing with grief and loss, and then also kind of an insight into your coaching and how you can support us once we work with you and go through all 6 steps. So
Yes, absolutely.
is that a good idea if we do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were to narrow it down to 3 steps, what would the first step then be for a parent going through grief and loss?
So I think the first step, which I call it building the foundation. But at this stage, I think going through grief and loss in general is a very strange period because you're starting to feel a lot of different emotions come on at once. If you know of the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, which I know you do, but for those of you who don't, there are different levels and different stages that we go through when we move through grief. Um, and so at some point, we kind of just stop thinking about everything and we don't feel at all, right? And then at another point, all of these things come crashing at us and we just feel everything all at once so intensely. So, a big thing about what I help my clients do is kind of work through these emotions and cope with these emotions at a level that they can understand and allow their kids to understand as well. Because, it's tough watching a parent go through something like that. And as a young kid, you may not know what's going on. So, a thing that I help them do is building your foundation. So, that's being able to express yourself. And for me, I found that through writing, and it became a way to like self track so that I can understand these different feelings that I was going through on a day to day basis and then look back at those things like, wow, I felt this weeks ago. And I'm like, now look at me. I feel so different. And once you're able to do this and able to release this stuff, it kind of just lets you just dump it all out and put it in a place where you don't have to tell anybody about the way you're feeling, but just it lets it out. Because the longer you hold that in, just there's more room for you to explode at these little situations. And so, yeah, I think a big part of that is being able to become aware that you're feeling all of these things and putting it in a place. So you start to understand that you have power over them and they don't have to control you. So, yeah, so at that point, you get to see a better understanding of yourself and a better understanding of how these emotions inside of you are working.
That's wonderful. And I know the value in that because I have worked with you and known that journaling is a um,
Huge.
big part of your coaching
Yeah.
and how it does help. Like it just, you don't feel it when you're in all that grief and loss. You you just can't see the other side. You can't see that you'll ever feel good again or better.
Mhm.
And it is almost like an instant release to be able to write it out and get it out of you. And and also to be able to look back and go, yeah, I was in a dark place then. I was really making maybe not great decisions, and look at now, and then being able to celebrate and finding a lot more optimism, positivity in your life. So I love that first step. Tell me about the second step for us going through grief and loss.
Yes. This one's major. And I think there's a big misconception around it. But so I call it crafting our exchanges. And what I mean by that is being able to communicate and strategize with not only your internal work, but the people around you. So in most cases, yeah, for parents, it's kids. But being able to be vulnerable is, I think, not something that a lot of parents do. Think there's a misconception that we have to be these strong leaders and we can't talk about our feelings, especially if you're from a generation where your parents probably emotions didn't exist. I know for me growing up, we never talked about our emotions, and I know it's the same way. And I think we now realize that sure, there's a different parenting model now, and we're starting to realize the effects of positive parenting, but subconsciously we still have those beliefs, you know and even though our values right now are different, we want to have this positive attitude, but it might not be reflecting in our behavior because we're doing it unconsciously. So being able to recognize that fact and being able to actually be vulnerable is hard. It's really hard, but it's necessary.
Mhm.
It's so necessary because once you're able to be vulnerable and explicit with those around you, it becomes so much easier to deal with it yourself. You can't just keep holding it inside. And at some point, that writing needs to come out in your voice, and it needs to be heard by the people around you so they can know how to help you, so they know how to be there for you. And that's why being able to explicitly communicate, even if it's, a young child, you can say it at an age appropriate level. I'm sad today. Mommy needs a break. Something that allows them to empathize with you and feel like, they can help you. But they won't know if they can help you if you don't say it explicitly.
Mhm.
So you have to be able to be vulnerable even in the hard moments.
I think that's such brilliant advice. And I used to think, I had to hide all my emotions. And if I was upset and grieving the loss in my life, that I had to keep that to myself and always be the strong one.
Mhm.
And I have to say, since being more open and vulnerable, I have found my kids to be the same. They're older, they're
Exactly.
all teenagers, and a couple of them are adults, but they now feel comfortable when they are going through something and they allow themselves to be vulnerable. So it's a beautiful gift to really give your kids, to set the tone for them and be that role model that I can share with you, right? To a
Mhm.
point. But I can be
Yeah.
open and I can share, that I am upset or I am sad or that I'm, feeling this loss, and I can talk about it with you. We're in a safe place, and then someday hopefully you'll feel the same, that you can come to me, that we're not all
Yeah.
perfect people that don't have emotions. We all have emotions. And I think that's great advice, Bridget, to give parents and as a
Yeah.
gift to their kids, and then they can continue to do that
Exactly.
for the next generation too. So what's the third step then that you want to share with us today?
So the third step is about becoming conscious. And I guess what I mean by that is really just being more aware.
Mhm.
And so I think this has a lot to do with, how we overstress ourselves and we become, this toxic ball of stress and anxiety and worry and all these things. But being able to focus our attention on certain aspects of our life really help resolve those things. So being able to be aware of those, those triggers, those emotions that are happening, like I talked about in the first step, and being aware of our communication strategies to ourselves and, the people around us, and then being aware of where we actually choose to focus ourselves, where we actually choose to, put too much energy on. I think a lot of people and a lot of parents now, they try to craft their life into this perfect thing, or they wish it was this perfect thing and they want this to be perfect and that to be perfect. And then when it's not, they set themselves up for failure, and then they're too focused on that failure, and then you just keep going in this cycle of worry and doubt and guilt and, all of these things. But if we're more focused on those positive things that are happening, and if we're more focused on the things that are going right, and if we're more focused on, the times when we did have those good exchanges with ourselves and with those other people around us, you're just going to keep seeing those good things happening. Because the more you focus on something, the more you're going to get from it. So if you're focused on the negatives, you're just going to get more negative. And if you're focused on the positive, you'll get more positive. So being aware is huge. It's pretty much all of these things put together. It's being aware of everything that's happening and choosing to focus on which areas of your life that are actually moving you forward and putting you in a positive direction.
That's wonderful.
Wow,
Okay, so I have a question for you then.
that's your question.
But those three steps are amazing. So, if a parent is listening to this and they're working through some grief and loss and they want to start journaling, so they're journaling their thoughts, their honest, vulnerable thoughts in their journal. Do you recommend that they also include like what is going right today? So that even if it's like a lot of negative thoughts and feelings going into their journaling, do you recommend that um, they include, but here's what's great today, so that
Yeah,
some of the
yeah.
focus is positive, or do you have a strategy for them that you help them not just get out those negative feelings, but also draw attention to the positives.
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's really essential to, let out all those negative things, but then at the end of it, bring it back to what are the positive things that are happening. So if you can write down 3 things that actually went well today, even if they're so small, but it's a great way to just make this whole experience, writing it down, a positive outcome and not just, a worry dump and
Mhm.
putting out all the negatives, even though that's so helpful and essential. You still need to bring it back home, bring it back to the positive space and, focus on that.
That's wonderful. And by getting out the negative, it will help you focus on the positive because you've got it out.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
don't need
it's
to
done.
stew
It's
on
out of me now.
it. Okay, so to recap those 3 steps, and building the foundation is the first one that you talked about, crafting
Yep.
your exchanges, so being vulnerable and with your kids and
With
and
yourself.
be, and with yourself, yeah, right, with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then becoming conscious is
Yes.
your third step. Now, I know on your site that parents can grab the whole 6 steps. That was only
Yes.
3. Um, so let's talk about your website. Tell us what your website is so they can grab that print off. It's a free print off, right? Of
Yep.
your success path.
Yeah. So my website is just my first and last name. It's bridgethallisey.com. So the success path you'll find right at the homepage. And then there are a couple different downloads. So I have my stress checklist, I have my communication guide, which are also available on the site as well if you scroll down. And then in the top right corner, you can see how to work with me. So it's all there, it's all laid out.
That's great. So let's talk about how parents can work with you. So you have a couple options. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so right now my primary focus is on the one-to-one coaching, but I do offer a group coaching as well for certain aspects. So say if you wanted to go through a stress masterclass, that's also available as well.
That's wonderful. And all of that, they can connect with you on your website for, I know you give a 45-minute free consultation
Consult. Yep.
call. Like that's a long call. That's more than what most people offer. And I think that's amazing. So if nothing else, take Bridget up on the 45-minute free call because that 45 minutes could change your life. And you don't have to live with this grief and pain forever. Bridget does have a strategy she works through. I know she is fabulous at what she does. And yeah, I want everyone to know that it's not always going to be this hard, that it's not
Yeah.
always, you don't always have to live in the grief. It is part of your life, but it doesn't have to be the main focus, and you can get through it. And I know that's what Bridget would say. I should have let you
Exactly.
say that, Bridget.
Yeah.
Because I'm
And
like,
don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. I think that's the biggest thing.
ask for help. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. It's so hard, isn't it? As parents, we're supposed
Yeah,
to do it
it is.
all. We're supposed to not ask for help and be able to do it on our own, but
Yeah.
it's impossible. I wasn't able to do it on my own. And I know through parent coaching like that, it really helped me through a lot of grief and loss in my life. And this year has been tough on a lot of parents. And I think through, the winter months, it's going to be as well. So
Hmm.
definitely reach out to Bridget. So it's Bridget Hallisey, sorry,
Oh,
.com. I'm going to put it, yeah, forget about how I talk. I'm just going to put it in the notes. And then you can also find Bridget on the parentcoach.club website as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
Yeah, you're making a big difference in the world. And I just hope you get a lot of parents connecting with you and doing that free 45-minute call because
Yes,
that's
it's worth it.
it's wonderful. And then, if you're not ready for the call yet, at least go to Bridget's website
Yep.
and have a look at those 6 steps. And then do the call. And then do the call. Anything we want to leave parents with, Bridget, before we go?
I think if I can leave you guys with one thing, it would be to find your voice and know your worth, and just don't be afraid to accept yourself and forgive yourself in what you're going through right now, because once you do that, that's the only way to move forward and really work through this. So that's all I have.
Mic drop. Thank you so much, Bridget. I hope you come back.
Thank you.
We'll see you
Yes.
again. Thank you.